In the beginning, after the end, Alice sat at the table opening a gray notebook. She dipped a quill in ink and brought it to the paper. She wrote that more than 2 years had passed, yet she still felt like she was constantly discovering new things about her child. A realization struck her. Arthur's parents had been helping him take his first steps. The boy's smile was so bright that she couldn't help but think he was the most adorable child. She cradled her son in her arms, his chestnut hair and azure eyes gazing at her with surprising intelligence. She knew that if she didn't become a firm and dependable mother, he would surely get into trouble in the future. She couldn't rely on Ray for that. Her fingers tightened around a stick. Alice turned, noticing something. Arthur's father was teaching him how to hold the stick like a sword. Ray turned to face her. His wife's gaze was piercing, radiating silent fury. She continued writing, noting that she had put a stop to her husband's attempt to teach their son how to fight. Her lips were a soft shade of pink. It reminded her of when Arthur could barely crawl. Alice strolled down the street. Ahead, she spotted a sign displaying knives. Arthur stretched his small hands toward her. She had observed that her child had a strong fascination with the small merchants that often visited Ashbur. So instead of buying groceries once or twice a week, they made trips to the city center almost every other day. Arthur reached for the glistening stones. His attention was drawn to a magician showcasing rings. Alice wrote that she wasn't going to spoil him. The magician conjured a flame. These outings were meant to ensure fresh food in the house and serve as an educational experience. She glanced at her son. Watching Arthur grow so quickly, she wondered what he would become one day. The quill scratched against the paper. Like his father, Arthur would likely be drawn to the life of an adventurer. Voices murmured throughout the room. Alice admitted in her writing that she couldn't shake her worries. She could only hope that he wouldn't follow in the footsteps of reckless teenagers who dreamed of adventure without understanding its dangers. She glanced at her son, who was crawling again. If only she could put an end to his constant habit of sneaking into the study. Alice scooped him up from the floor. She considered moving his bed into the study. Carrying him out of the room, she resolved to do something about it. However, the next day, she abruptly shut her diary, set the quill back into the inkwell, and left the study. Arthur stood by the window, gazing outside. Ray was pulling off his glove. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed the gloves aside. Nearly 2 years had passed since the hero had embarked on his arduous journey of learning. His father extended his hands before him. Arthur had gained a wealth of knowledge since then. Yet the thrill of learning something new never faded. He peered at his father through the window. Ray was frowning, speaking under his breath. He had been muttering for several minutes, his concentration unshaken. With his hands raised, he focused intently. The stone in front of him began to rise. It levitated even higher. A powerful energy surrounded Ray. Arthur watched in awe, curiosity burning in his eyes as he wondered what his father was about to unleash. The man raised his hands, causing the air to shift and the stones to rise. His son watched in awe, mesmerized by the sight. Marking the end of Chapter 3,